Welcome to the Slow Thinkers podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Knight. I'm not going to tell you a lot about me. You can read that down in the bio section, the description section. But today I wanted to talk to you about a passage that comes up very often from those who are, um, I'm not going to say enemies, but those who seem to have a beef with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which I'm a member. And that's Galatians 1:8. And it talks about though we are an angel, um, should preach to you any other gospel. And they use this passage because, well, I'm not really sure why. It has something to do, I'm sure, with Moroni appearing to Joseph Smith and presenting to him the Book of Mormon. And that's the only thing I can think of. Anyway, it doesn't matter. This is their favorite scripture to use to somehow state that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is false, because Paul said, what if another angel comes and teaches you, though you shouldn't listen to that. So today's episode is on that Galatians 1:8. And I'm going to take this from the website Guardian Angel, I believe, which is my website. And this happens to be one of the apologetics writings that I did quite some time ago. And basically, I'm just going to go through this and share this with you. You can find the website right up here is the URL for that, and I'd love to have you stop by and see that. Let me close this down here. There we go. So, though we are an angel, and this is Paul, and he's teaching. And so I'm going to go ahead and just jump into this. And if you have any comments or any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. I'd be happy to respond. One of the things I do want to kind of make a statement about, though, is the name of the podcast, the Slow Thinkers Podcast. Um, Pardon me. About 10 years ago, I was working on my doctorate, and I was in a class. I don't know, there were probably 20 students. And one of the individuals in the class made a comment about slow thinkers, people who are slow thinkers. And I don't remember the whole context for that, but I took it to mean me. And the reason I did is because I don't, when I'm having conversations with people, I don't um, I don't think really fast about things. It takes me a minute to process what someone has said, come up with my response, and then put it out. And for that reason, quite frankly, in group discussions, I get left behind quite a bit. Um, and and so in some ways, it always kind of bothered me, slow thinker, and I thought that was derogatory. Um, Part of that has to do with the fact that I have a little bit of autism, and well, I don't. I'm autistic, and so we have to process information a little bit differently. But I looked this up the other day, and I know I'm sidetracking just a little bit, but I do want to give a background on the name of the podcast, and I'll only do it in this episode. But I looked it up the other day. I thought, is there actually some kind of, is slow thinker actually a term that's being used? And when I looked it up, I was kind of surprised pleasantly to come to understand that there is, and that most often it refers to people who prefer to have time to think about things. We don't fly off the handle at the first thought that comes to mind. We will. I'll see for instance, a post on Galatians 1:8, and I'll wonder about it. So I'll go and I'll study Galatians 1:8. And in fact, in preparing for this particular article that I wrote, I read all of Galatians so I could understand in context what chapter 1 was about, and then in particular what chapter or what verse 8 was about. Slow thinkers tend to want to take time and ponder the things that we're studying. We don't just rush through things. And there are other people who are able to read quickly and get in the conversation and come back with answers and responses. I'm not one of those. I like to think about it. And then I really like to put it in writing. And others are welcome to read what I write, and they're welcome to comment on it. Um, I, I am on X, and I post this URL often when I see others post Galatians 1:8. And I've yet to have anyone come back and say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And I know they're reading it because I've got the statistics from the website to show that. So I feel good about the response that I've given. And today, that's what I want to cover. So we're just going to start at the top, and I'm kind of just going to read through it. You can read along with me if you want. You can sit back and listen if you're doing the dishes or making dinner or whatever, driving down the street, um, and then come back to it later if you want to do that too. So we're going to start right up at the top. This is Paul, picture of Paul up here, AI generated. I thought he did a pretty good job. Anyway, a common argument of evangelicals and those who oppose the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints references Galatians 1:8. And it seems that for them, the entire epistle of Paul to the Galatians ends with this verse. So let's see if we can dissect what Paul is actually talking about. We start by quoting the verse without context as a standalone, as is customary of antagonists when confronting members of the church. But though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached unto you, let him be accursed. So that's Galatians 1:8. To begin to understand what Paul is saying, we need to go back 2 verses for the setup. So we're going to read 6 and 7. Paul, speaking to the Galatians, says, I marvel that ye are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Christ unto another gospel, which is not another gospel, but there be some that trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Christ. So again, Galatians 1:6-7. Who is the person who called them into the grace of Christ and from the Galatians are so soon removed? Paul. Galatians was written about 14 years after Paul's first visit to them. And during that first visit, he laid out the gospel of Jesus Christ for the Galatians. And I think we're going to get into that in a little bit here. So we begin with Paul and his journey on the road to Damascus. Saul, if you'll recall, we begin with Saul and his journey on the road to Damascus. Saul is met by Jesus Christ, who, among other things, chastises him for his actions in persecuting the believers. Saul is made blind and is taken to Damascus at the Lord's instruction. There he is healed of his blindness, spends time with the Lord's disciples, learns the gospel, and eventually is sent on a mission to the Gentiles. We don't really know the order in which Paul visited various groups of Gentiles, but somewhere along the way he preached to the Galatians, and we find that in Acts 16:6. This is evident again from Galatians 1:6. I read that previously, where Paul marvels that they are so soon removed from him that called you. In other words, Paul taught them the gospel of Christ, and now they are no longer living what he taught them. They are living in a state of apostasy. So what was it that the gospel of Paul, what was the gospel of Paul? Let me go back and start over here. So what was the gospel Paul taught? To understand this, we actually need to finish reading the full epistle. In chapters 2-6, we grab some insight that, among other things, when Paul taught the Galatians originally, his doctrine did not include the law of circumcision. The Gentiles were exempt from this law, which was specific to the Jews and their covenant with God. And in the intervening years from when Paul first gave this gospel to the Galatians, someone apparently came among them and began teaching them that if they were going to be Christians, they needed to be circumcised. The issue for Paul was that this was not the gospel, which gives clarity to the following passage. I marvel that ye are so soon removed from him that called you into the grace of Christ unto another gospel. That was Paul, which is not another, but there be some that trouble you and would pervert the gospel of Christ. And again in chapter 3, O foolish Galatians, who hath bewitched you that ye should not obey the truth, before whose eyes Jesus Christ hath been evidently set forth, crucified among you? In other words, Paul is saying that someone or a group of someones have been teaching a perversion of the gospel, and that in reality it is not the gospel. These someones were teaching for doctrine the precepts of man, and this conversation was specifically centered on the law of circumcision, as introduced in chapter 2. So Paul's argument is that the law of circumcision as a token of the covenant was done away with by Christ's mission. Paul was pleading with the saints in Galatia to return to the gospel he had given them. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Behold, I, Paul, say unto you, that if ye be circumcised, Christ shall profit you nothing. For I testify again to every man that is circumcised, that he is a debtor to the whole law, to do the whole law. Christ is become of no effect unto you, whosoever of you are justified by the law. You're fallen from grace. For we, through the Spirit, wait for the hope of righteousness by faith. For in Jesus Christ neither circumcision availeth anything, nor uncircumcision, but faith which worketh by love. And that's found in Galatians chapter 5. Paul was setting aright the misunderstanding that had crept into the Galatians' understanding of the gospel. It was not in being circumcised or uncircumcised that they would be justified and find grace, but rather it was only in and through the Spirit that they could hope for righteousness and find the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free. So, when Galatians 1:8 is presented by detractors of the church, stand firm in correcting the supposition that Paul was speaking of the entirety of the gospel of Christ. Encourage antagonists to study the whole epistle. Now let's address the pesky little misunderstanding of Paul's statement, though we or an angel from heaven. For all intents and purposes, this is a simple turn of the phrase to make Paul's statement more impactful. He wanted the saints of Galatia to understand just how important his previous teachings were. It would be similar to your mother saying, if I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. It's most likely she has not, but you understand with greater significance the message she is trying to convey. What is interesting is that antagonists will take literally this statement from Paul and yet completely dismiss Paul's message to the Corinthians, else what shall they do which are baptized for the dead, if the dead rise not at all? Why are they then baptized for the dead? But we'll save that for another post. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Slow Thinkers podcast. Again, you're welcome to leave your comments in the comment section. I'd love it if you would subscribe to this channel. And I hope to see you on the next episode. And we look forward to getting to know you. Thanks.